What's good, y'all? Real quick before we get into the video, I do want to apologize for the lack of videos this past week. Unfortunately, my microphone has broke. If you follow me on Twitter, I know I mentioned it before. If you don't follow me on Twitter, make sure you do. But yeah, I went to go edit my preseason preview video for the Denver Nuggets, and my microphone was broke. All the audio was messed up, so I had to order a new one, wait for a new one to come in. Obviously, I couldn't record or re-record until this new one came in, so that's why this video is late. Regardless though, we will be going over my Eastern Conference standings predictions for the 2023-2024 NBA season. I did go through and predicted, obviously the first seed all the way down to the 15th seed, but I also broke them up into groups because some of these teams can really go either way, moving up a spot, moving down a spot. I'm really doing this to start a discussion with you guys. Obviously, it'd be really cool if I got this exactly perfect and, my basketball mind would just be amazing. But that's probably not what's going to happen, so if you disagree with anything, make sure you leave it down in the comments. This Saturday also, I'm going to be dropping my Western Conference predictions, and that was even more difficult than this list, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that one. And without further ado, let's get into the actual predictions, starting off with the bottom tier, and I labeled this tier as too young. And in this group, we have seeds 15 through 13, 15 being the Charlotte Hornets, 14, the Washington Wizards, and number 13, the Detroit Pistons. I think these three teams have a lot in common in the fact that they all have a ceiling raiser, LaMelo Ball, Jordan Poole, who's new to Washington, and of course Cade Cunningham, who's coming back for the Detroit Pistons this year. But beyond that, they either have very glaring holes in their roster or just their roster is completely inexperienced, filled with a bunch of young guys, and let's be honest, guys that might not even be in the league in a few years. Don't get me wrong though, all these teams do have their own individual pieces that I am interested in, like Mark Williams and Brandon Miller for the Charlotte Hornets. They're really cool, but still very, very young at that same time. With the Wizards, I already mentioned Jordan Poole's there. I think he can put up a bunch of cool stat lines, but I don't know if that's going to lead to winning. Same thing with Kyle Kuzma. I think he can have some crazy games as well, but they really have no good defenders on this team besides Bilal Coulibaly. I think I said that right. Shout out to him. He's been incredible this preseason, but, I don't really see them making anything happen. If I had to bet on any of these three teams, it would be the Pistons to work their way up the standings and maybe make the play-in, maybe, but probably not if we're being honest. They're just very, very young. Again, they have cool pieces, but nothing right now solidified. Moving on to the next group, I have it labeled as missed their window, and that includes the 11th and the 12th seed. The 12th seed being the Chicago Bulls and the 11th seed being the Toronto Raptors. Both the Bulls and the Raptors were play-in teams last season. I believe it was the 10th and 9th seed, so I have them both regressing into this season. And that's just slightly based on the fact that all around the East they got better, and these two teams didn't really get better. When it comes to the Bulls, I have been very, very vocal in the fact that I do not believe in their big three of Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and of Nikola Vucevic. I think they should move on. I think a lot of other NBA fans and other Bulls fans believe they should move on. But for some reason, they are very stubborn in the fact and believing that they can actually win something with this core. No disrespect to the players individually. Individually, I think they're all very good players, at varying rates. But the fact that they have three main scorers and none of them play any defense, very troublesome. I think this is the last season that the Bulls keep this core together unless they, prove me wrong and are a solidified playoff team and everything like that. I just don't see it whatsoever. Then when it comes to the Raptors, I just don't really like how their team is constructed as a whole. They lost Fred VanVleet in free agency this season, who is their starting point guard, and they replaced him with Dennis Schroeder, who, to say the least, that's definitely a downgrade. And beyond that, they don't really have much other guard play. I mean, they have Malachi Flynn, cool. Obviously, Gary Trent Jr. is there, but he's more of like a flamethrower, score first, spark plug type of guy, not really a point guard gonna, run your offense through them. They do have the point forwards of Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes, but when you have both of them on the court at the same time, it kind of gets a little weird on offense considering both of them cannot really shoot. They really are trying to get to the basket to score, and when you have two of your main guys trying to get to the basket, it's very easy to just pack the paint, especially when you don't have guards around them that can shoot like that. I'm not too sure if either of those are hot takes, but in my opinion, I really just don't see either of these teams making too much noise, and they will be missing the playoffs and play-in total. And that leads us to our next group of teams, very simply called the play-in teams. And of course, self-explanatory, it seeds 10 through 7, the teams that are going to be playing in the play-in tournament. At number 10, I have the Orlando Magic. At number 9, the Brooklyn Nets. Number 8, the Indiana Pacers, and number 7, the Atlanta Hawks. When it comes to the Magic and the Pacers, I think they are very close in timeline for their team, if you want to say. Both extremely young teams, but they still have been taking these steps. The Pacers may be just a slight step ahead of the Magic, and that's why I have them, spread out like that. But I think they are very close together. Both teams have, their guy in Paolo for the Magic or Tyrese Halliburton for the Indiana Pacers, and they also have a good surrounding around them, a combination of young players and also vets that, can help them build up. I've mentioned many times that I'm very excited to watch the Magic play this season. I think they're going to be an extremely fun team to watch with, of course, I already mentioned Paolo being their main guy. Maybe he can take that extra jump to really solidify himself as something in this league more than just the next up-and-coming guy. But they also have guys like Franz Wagner, who I think is going to have an incredible season, just won gold for Germany in the FIBA World Cup. He played amazing throughout that. They have a bunch of different guards that can give you whatever you need on a given night with Markelle, Gary Harris, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, Anthony Black. A lot of great guys right there in that room. Wendell Carter, he's been incredible this preseason, shooting the ball just at an insane rate. I think this team could be really, really good and have a lot of upside. Right now, I just have them at the 10th seed because I haven't seen too much yet. Then when it comes to the 9th seeded Nets, I think I'm a lot lower on them than a lot of other people, or at least from what I've been seeing. Obviously, they did make the playoffs last season, and Mikal looked incredible and everything. But I think a lot of people tend to forget that they were a below 500 team after the trade deadline. You could give the excuse that it was just a team that was thrown together, a bunch of different guys that, barely played together throughout the season. And that is a valid point. But at the same time, I think if you don't give them such a head start from having KD and Kyrie on your roster, they don't reach that high in the standings. I think they will be a decent team. They'll give you some struggles when you're versing them, but I don't think they're going to be a good team, just enough to get into the play-in. Then for the Pacers, last season when Tyrese Halliburton was playing before he got injured, they were a top 5 seed, I believe, maybe even top 4 seed. They were incredibly good, and that was with them having 0 persons playing the power forward. I said that really weird, but they had no power forward on their roster. They were running like Aaron Nesmith at power forward, no disrespect. He's not a power forward. Now they have Jarris Walker, who has looked very good in preseason too, gives them a little bit of that defense at that 4 spot, and they also traded for Obi Toppin, former Knicks, shout out my guy, gives them that offense on the power forward spot. I think Tyrese is ready to, he's an all-star last season. I think he's ready to really be one of the top guards in this league running this offense. They got Bruce Brown, the $20 million man. Can't believe I almost forgot to mention his name. Benedict Mathurin, all-rookie team member last season. This team is poised to be really good this season. And then for the Hawks at 7, just barely missing the actual playoffs, staying in that play-in tournament. I think the full year under Quinn Snyder is going to benefit them, offensively at least, really get that offensive flowing. You've seen a little bit in the preseason, they're using Trae Young off the ball. Hopefully that can, be throughout the entire season, that he can show that effort and be off-ball player throughout that. DeJounte Murray, him and Trae have a full season under their belt, meshing together. Hopefully that can really help them with their chemistry. The one thing with me, though, is they traded John Collins. Obviously, he wasn't their main power forward that they were looking forward to have on this team, but they really don't have anyone else. I know they do have Jalen Johnson, but I think that he would be better off coming off their bench, at least just for this one more year, to really just get some more NBA experience under him. I think they'll end up going with Saddiq Bey, who was pretty good for them after the trade deadline last season when they traded for him, but he's still very undersized there. I don't know. I think they're going to be pretty subpar on defense. That's the only thing that's going to be holding them back. And now we're left with the top 6 teams out east, the teams that I believe are going to solidify themselves as playoff teams. And in this next group, labeled Can't Count Them Out, I have included the 6th-seeded Miami Heat and the 5th-seeded 76ers. I think when you look at both the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers, both teams objectively had bad off seasons. Just historically, these franchises have been good. No matter who's on the roster, things change around, whatever, but they still are perennial playoff teams. I mean, we just saw last season the Miami Heat were the 8th seed, made it all the way to the NBA Finals. You can't count these teams out no matter what the roster looks like on paper, but I still can't put them much higher than this. When it comes to the Miami Heat, they lost Gabe Vincent, they lost Max Strus, 2 starters, and that were very important in making this whole run to the NBA Finals. They lost both of those guys for nothing. They were banking on getting Dame and trading for Dame. They did not do that. They'll be getting back a healthy Tyler Hero, which, cool, But still, again, kind of like what I was saying with the Bulls and the Raptors, the rest of the East is getting better, and they're getting better fast. The Miami Heat do not want to be left, in the dust behind. Honestly, if they didn't make it all the way to the finals, they might even be lower and in the play-in for me right now. I'm just really giving them the respect for being a finals team. And then for the 76ers, obviously, the James Harden drama. I think it was reported today that he was in Houston instead of at team practice, and it was unexcused. There's a lot going on there. You don't know what's going to happen. So respectfully, if James Harden stays, maybe, they somehow work it out. I highly, highly doubt it. Maybe they climb up in the standings, or they trade him for a bag of bones and they fall down in the standings. There's really no good projection for the 76ers. But regardless, they have the MVP, Joel Embiid, on their team. Tyrese Maxey, I think, is going to have a great season. Tobias Harris last season had a great year. Hopefully he can continue that going forward. I think this team's going to be solid, but I do think that they've regressed. Now on to the next group, which I have labeled as Dark Horse Eastern Conference Finals teams. I know that's a mouthful right there, but I have the 3 seed and the 4 seed in it. 4 seed New York Knicks, 3 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. I think both of these teams are incredibly good. I think their rosters from top to bottom are very good, very minimal holes in both of these teams, but they just aren't the top 2 teams, which I'm sure you guys know what the top 2 teams are. With the Knicks coming off of their first playoff series win in over a decade, they decided, you know what, we have something brewing right here. Let's just run it back and try to grow together. After trading for Josh Hart, they were one of the best teams in the NBA, win percentage-wise, point differential-wise, whatever, a whole bunch of different stats. They were top tier since acquiring Josh Hart. They're going to have him for the entirety of a season now. They also brought in Dante DiVincenzo to really unite the Villanova boys all together. Mikal, we're looking for you. We're waiting for you. But I think, that's going to come in and give an extra little boost to their bench, which is already incredible. Jalen Brunson, he's going to be an all-star this season. Quote me on it. Julius Randle, hopefully he doesn't have his little flip-flop year where he's good, bad. Hopefully he continues that being good, and I think he will. My one little gripe that I have with this Knicks roster is the fact that they have no backup power forward, but I'm really not bugging about it too much because Josh Hart plays way bigger than he is. I'm sure he's going to be fine in that backup power forward role, and also Tibbs loves to run his stars plenty of minutes. There's not a lot of time that Julius Randle isn't on the court, so I'm sure they'll be fine when he isn't. Then when it comes to the Cavs, they're coming off of an incredible season last year. Obviously, very disappointing losing to the Knicks in the playoffs. But the biggest reason they lost that was their lack of shooting, and they went into this offseason and said, bet we're fixing that issue. Signing Max Strus to be their starting power forward, I think he's going to fit like a glove there, being an incredible player for them. And then they also signed Georges Niang as well, who brings that shooting, and I think brings an extra layer to just the lineups that they can run. I think I've already mentioned it before, but a lineup of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Georges Niang, and Evan Mobley. I'm extremely excited to see if they run that and how frequently they run that. I think if either of these teams really just catch a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs, they can give the Bucks or the Celtics a run for their money on any given night. And that leads us to the final tier labeled Elite, and I'm sure you guys already know who's in this team. The number 1 and the number 2 seeds, in my opinion. Number 2, the Boston Celtics, and number 1, the Milwaukee Bucks. Unless one of their main guys on either team goes down, I don't see a world where either of these teams are not the top 2 seeds. You could flip-flop, maybe the Celtics are number 1, Bucks number 2. Sure, you can argue that, but neither of these teams are dropping below 2 if they stay healthy. Both the Celtics and the Bucks have arguments for the best starting 5 in all of basketball. That's how good they are. But they both also share the struggle of, numbers 7 through 10 on their roster, very, very questionable. The only reason I have the Bucks above the Celtics, and it's really not by much, is the fact that I am just super, super high on the duo of Giannis and Dame. I think that they're going to be playing incredibly off of each other. And then, of course, the surrounding support of Brook Lopez, of Chris Middleton, of Bobby Portis off that bench. I think that they just are really, really good, built for success. And again, as long as they're healthy, I think they're going a long way. And here's a look at my final Eastern Conference standings predictions for the 2023-2024 NBA season. I really did this to start the discussion with you guys, so make sure you leave a comment what you agree with, what you disagree with, you know, what's my best hot take that I did here, what's the worst. Make sure you leave it down in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The next video that I do is going to be the Western Conference standings prediction, so you do not want to miss that one. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.